The day my promotion was announced, nobody congratulated me. Not really. They smiled. They shook my hand. They sent emails filled with exclamation marks and corporate buzzwords. But behind every smile, I saw the same question. Why him? Or rather a broken bar. What's really going on between him and the CEO? I stood at my desk staring at the company-wide announcement on my screen. Please join us in congratulating Ethan Carter on his promotion to Director of Operations. It was the position I had spent 7 years working toward. 7 years of late nights. 7 years of missed birthdays. 7 years of solving problems nobody else wanted to touch. And somehow, none of that mattered, because our CEO was a woman, and she had chosen me. Within an hour, the whispers had already started. I heard them near the coffee machine. He's only 33. Funny how she skipped over people with more experience. Maybe they're closer than we think. I pretended not to hear. But hearing wasn't the problem. Believing that I could ignore it was. By lunchtime, the rumors had spread across 3 floors of the building. By the end of the week, people looked at me differently. Some coworkers who used to eat lunch with me stopped inviting me. Others suddenly became overly polite, like they were afraid of offending the CEO's favorite employee. The worst part? I knew exactly who deserved the promotion. Me. And somehow that made it hurt even more. Because no matter how hard I worked, I couldn't prove something people had already decided was untrue. The CEO's name was Victoria Reynolds. She was brilliant, demanding, fair, and probably the most respected executive in our industry. 5 years earlier, when she took over the struggling logistics company, people predicted failure. Instead, she transformed it into one of the fastest growing companies in the country. She expected excellence, nothing less. That was why the rumors felt so insulting, not just to me, to her. As if a woman couldn't possibly recognize talent without personal feelings getting involved. 2 weeks after my promotion, Victoria called me into her office. The moment I walked in, she knew something was wrong. "You look exhausted," she said. I laughed. "I've been better." She leaned back in her chair. "The rumors." It wasn't a question. I nodded. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she sighed. "I'm sorry. That surprised me." "You didn't do anything wrong." "No," she said quietly. "But sometimes leadership means watching good people pay the price for decisions you know were right." I looked out her office window toward the city skyline. Did I deserve it? She stared at me like I had just asked whether the sky was blue. "Ethan," her voice sharpened, "you earned it long before I gave it to you." I believed her. But belief didn't stop the loneliness. Months passed. The promotion came with more responsibility than I imagined. New teams, new challenges, new pressure. Every mistake seemed amplified. Every success seemed dismissed. Whenever something went well, people credited Victoria. Whenever something went wrong, they blamed me. Still, I kept going, not because I wanted approval anymore, because people depended on me. One of those people was Marcus. Marcus worked in shipping. He was 58, hardworking, and always smiling despite carrying more burdens than anyone knew. One Friday evening, I noticed he hadn't gone home. The warehouse was nearly empty, yet he sat alone at a loading dock staring at the floor. I walked over. "You okay?" He forced a smile. "Just tired." The answer sounded rehearsed. I sat beside him. "Try again." For a long moment he stayed silent. Then everything came out. His wife had cancer. Insurance wasn't covering a treatment. Their savings were gone. They were weeks away from losing their house. He spoke calmly, almost too calmly, like someone who had run out of energy to panic. When he finished, I didn't know what to say. So I listened. Sometimes that's the most valuable thing you can do. Over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about him, his wife, his family, their fear. One night I remembered something Victoria had told me years earlier. Leadership isn't about power. It's about responsibility. The next morning, I used part of my new salary increase to start a private fundraiser. I didn't want recognition. I didn't tell Marcus. I simply reached out to people quietly, friends, vendors, former employees, anyone willing to help. The response shocked me. People donated, then donated more, then shared the fundraiser with others. Within 3 weeks, We had raised nearly $80,000, enough to cover treatment costs, enough to save their home, enough to give them hope. When Marcus found out, he cried. Not the polite tears people shed in public. Real tears, the kind that come from somewhere deep inside. I don't know how to thank you, he said. You don't. He looked confused. I smiled. You help someone else when they need it. That was enough. What I didn't know was that someone had been watching. Victoria. She never mentioned the fundraiser, never congratulated me, never brought it up. I assumed she didn't even know. Then 6 months later, everything changed. The company hosted its annual leadership summit. Hundreds of employees attended. Executives from around the country flew in. I expected another routine event. Instead, halfway through the afternoon, Victoria stepped onto the stage and said something unexpected. Today, I want to talk about leadership. The room became quiet. She looked across hundreds of faces. Most people think leadership is measured by profits. A slide appeared behind her. Quarterly revenue numbers, growth statistics, industry rankings. Then she shook her head. They're wrong. The slide disappeared. Another appeared. It showed a photo of Marcus and his wife. Gasps spread through the audience. Victoria continued. 6 months ago, one of our employees faced a crisis. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. He needed help. She paused. A lot of help. The room was completely silent. Then she told the story. Not all of it, just enough. How an anonymous fundraiser appeared. How lives were changed. How dozens of people came together. How one act of kindness inspired hundreds more. Then she revealed something I didn't know. After Marcus's story spread internally, employees had started helping each other. Medical bills, housing emergencies, childcare expenses, scholarships, support networks. The culture of the company had begun changing, not because of policy, because of people. Victoria looked directly at me. Many of you wondered why Ethan was promoted. My stomach tightened. The room felt frozen. Every eye turned toward me. You assumed I saw something personal. A few uncomfortable faces looked away. Victoria continued. The truth is much simpler. She stepped away from the podium. For years, I watched him solve problems nobody else wanted. She took another step. I watched him stay late without being asked. Another step. I watched him defend employees who couldn't defend themselves. Another. I watched him take responsibility for failures that weren't his fault. The room was silent. Then she said the words I'll never forget. But the reason I knew he was ready for leadership had nothing to do with performance reviews. She pointed toward Marcus. Leaders help people when nobody is watching. A lump formed in my throat. Victoria smiled. Most of you only noticed his promotion. She paused. I noticed his character. For a moment nobody moved. Then something remarkable happened. Marcus stood and began clapping. One person, then another, then another. Within seconds, the entire room was on its feet, applauding. Not for a promotion, not for a title, for something deeper. Recognition, truth, humanity. I stood there overwhelmed, embarrassed, grateful, emotional, and for the first time since my promotion, I felt seen. After the summit ended, dozens of employees approached me. Some apologized. Others thanked me. Several admitted they had believed the rumors. One man looked ashamed. I judged you, he said. I know. I'm sorry. I smiled. Then we're good. Because holding on to resentment would have defeated the entire lesson. Weeks later, something even more meaningful happened. A young employee named Sarah stopped me in the hallway. My dad lost his job last year, she said. We almost lost everything. I listened. She smiled through tears. When I heard what you did for Marcus, I started volunteering at a local shelter. She laughed nervously. Then some of my friends joined. I stared at her. She continued. Now we serve over 200 meals every weekend. At that moment, I realized kindness doesn't stop where it starts. It moves. It grows. It multiplies. Like ripples spreading across water. One act becomes another, then another, then another. Years later, People still talked about that fundraiser, not because of me, because of what it represented. Proof that compassion can exist even in places people least expect. Proof that leadership is bigger than authority. Proof that success means very little if you climb alone. Victoria eventually retired. Before leaving, she handed me a handwritten note. I still keep it in my desk. It says, "Never confuse achievement with significance. Achievement changes your life. Significance changes someone else's." I think about those words often, especially when people ask about my career. They expect stories about promotions, contracts, business victories. Instead, I tell them about Marcus, about a warehouse worker who needed help, about a company that learned compassion, about a CEO who saw character before everyone else did. Because in the end, the promotion wasn't the most important thing I earned. Trust was, and trust is built the same way every meaningful thing in life is built. One act of kindness at a time. The rumors eventually disappeared. The titles changed. The offices changed. The years passed. But one truth remained. People may misunderstand your success. They may question your motives. They may create stories that diminish your hard work. Let them. Because character is a way of revealing itself, not immediately, not dramatically, but inevitably, and when it does, the people who matter won't remember the rumors. They'll remember the lives you touched. And that's a promotion no title can ever match.